Good evening. The topic for today is negative emotions. But before that, I think we should just draw a small map of where we are and where we want to go, and how we use our body-brain system as an instrument to progress towards where we want to go. So, for a human being, there are 4 states of consciousness. The first state, or the lowest state, is sleep. And this is the sleep we have at night. We spend about 5 to 8 hours in this state every night. And we will include in this state the dreams we have at night. So sleep plus the dreams we have at night, we will take as the first state of sleep. After about 5 to 6 hours of sleep, we do tend to slip into the half dream state, semi-awake state. In this state, we see that we are waking up. Yeah, please come here. Here there is a chair empty. But in the sleep state, there is no direct connection to physical sensations. But there is some kind of consciousness that when we wake up in the morning, we are able to say that I slept well or I did not sleep well. So there is a small ray of consciousness. The second state of consciousness is called as the dream state, but not the dreams we have at night, right? So the first is called as nidra, or the sleep state. The second is called as swapna, the dream state. This is the state in which we spend the rest of our lives, right? We eat, drink, move about, talk, and we have a relative presence that we are doing something, we are something. We bump into different things, right? And but it is a very mechanical state in which we live, and that is why it is called the dream state. Now the next 2 states, that is the third state of consciousness and the fourth state of consciousness, do not come to man automatically. He has to make an effort to go into those states of consciousness. And it is that effort which we are going to talk about today. It is characterized by being present or holding presence or being aware that I am doing something. Right? I'll just go into this. The beauty of the second state of consciousness, the state of dreams, is that people feel they own the third state of consciousness. They are conscious. So if you ask anybody walking on the road, or you meet anyone and say you're in a dream, he says, of course I'm not in a dream, I'm awake, right? And this is the basic obstacle into moving in the third state of consciousness, because we cannot move into a higher state of consciousness if we feel that we already possess it, if we feel that we already have it. This third state of consciousness is characterized by holding of presence, that I am. It is characterized by dividing the attention into one arrow of self-consciousness. And if we try to divide our attention and hold our presence, we won't be able to do it even for more than a few seconds. And so that is why we realize that the third state of consciousness is very difficult to achieve. And the fourth state of consciousness, of course, we won't talk about it. The third state in our Shastra is called as Jagruti. The fourth state is called as Turiya. Turiya meaning the fourth is the state where of objective consciousness, where we see life as it really is. Now, let me just draw these states of consciousness. So we said the lowest state of consciousness is called sleep, right? And I don't have to explain this state of consciousness. The second state of consciousness we call as dream, nidra, swapna. It is also called by many people as psychological sleep. And this is the state we spend our whole lives in. Our whole lives are spent in these two states of consciousness. The third state is called as awakened consciousness. Jagruti, self-consciousness. Now, I'll have to explain this state a little, right? So, our aim is to rise from this state of consciousness to this third state of consciousness. And then, of course, if we are lucky, to the fourth state of consciousness, right? Now, what do we mean by self-consciousness? Now, if you see in plant life, attention in plants can only move in one direction, outside. That is, if a plant sends its roots somewhere and it feels that there are nutrients over here, it will send its roots towards those nutrients. Or if the plant is not getting enough of sunlight, it will know that sunlight is available in this gap between two trees, and it will send its leaves towards that sunlight, its branches towards that sunlight. But the plant does not have the eye sending attention over here. Similarly, in the animal kingdom, animals can only respond to something outside. They cannot have a desire inside, right? So, if an animal, sees its food outside and the animal is hungry, it is going to go to catch that food, right? It does not have a self-consciousness in the sense that no animal can say today I want to fast, right? It's not possible. Only man can say I want to fast today. Or if we have a certain season in which all the lions come into heat, then all the lions come into heat. But one lion cannot say I want to practice brahmacharya or something. It is not possible. Right? So, what happens to one happens to all. In animals, there's a kind of general consciousness, right? So, animals only live for four things, that is, for their mate, for their food, for their shelter, and for their fear, what they are frightened of, right? And all these things send attention outside. Attention does not. So as long as man is only responding to something outside, he is not man, he is just following what animals and plants do. So as long as he is a victim of responding to external stimuli, right, he's just following what they do. Now supposing I am drinking water, the water is outside, my attention is on the water, and this is the state of psychological sleep, that I am responding to my thirst, right, and I am drinking water. All animals respond to their thirst and drink water. But if I can divide my attention, so all consciousness starts with dividing of attention. So if I can divide my attention, then there is attention on water, that I am drinking water, but there is one arrow of attention inside. I feel myself, I feel my presence, I hold my presence. There is a self-consciousness that I drinking water. Is this now clear to everyone? So from morning to evening, we do so many things, but not a single moment of self-consciousness. I got up from the bed, I had a shower, I wore my clothes, right? We just wear the clothes, we just have the shower, we just get up from the bed. I experiencing eating breakfast. And this can only come if we can divide our attention, one arrow of attention on the inside. That this is the beginning of self-consciousness. And the third state of consciousness is the state of self-consciousness. Now we are moving from the second state, the dream state, to the Jagruti state. And when we are able to do this all 24 hours, and it is a very long practice, it takes years to come to that state, attention inside all 24 hours, then we have achieved this state of Jagruti. Then the fourth state of consciousness automatically comes to meet us. We don't have to do anything about the fourth state of consciousness. Now, what is attention? What is attention? And attention is the only currency of the spiritual journey. Right? So I look at you, but attention flows out of my eyes and allows me to look at you. Right? So if I'm looking at you but attention is not going out, then I'm looking at you and still I cannot see you. I don't register you inside. So it is attention which makes the five senses work. And attention comes from that inner divine spirit. It is a quality of the spirit. It is a torch. It is like a light. It sends out its light to experience life. So when we turn attention inwards into I doing this, we are trying to take attention back from where it came from. And the whole spiritual journey is nothing else but taking attention back to the source of attention. But for that, we have to first come into the present moment, right? I cannot divide my attention if I'm in the future or if I'm in the past. When I look at you and I see you, then you see so many times your eyes become blank and they go away, and I know that you have started daydreaming inside, or your attention has gone away to something. You're not here. Now the present moment is not a thought. We cannot hold the present moment as a thought, because all thought is created from memory, and memory is always in the past. Memory can never be in the present, right? So there is a state where we come into the present moment, we divide our attention and we look for the state of Jagrati, and that is the beginning of when we divide attention, one on myself, one on you, one on what I'm thinking inside, one on what is there outside, and slowly we rise in that state of Jagrati and we reach the fourth state, Turiya. Now, we'll just talk about something else over here, and then we'll come back to this. Now, what we call the body-brain system. This is the instrument from which we gather consciousness. This is the instrument we use to work upon ourselves. Now, let us try to understand this. Supposing we take for granted that there is something called a soul, and that soul wants to gather something called consciousness, right? Why does it want to gather something called consciousness? Because if it can increase, rise in consciousness, then behind the soul there's something called spirit or Atma, and it can become equal in consciousness in that, and it can merge into that, merge back into the Atma. We can say this in a story type of way, that initially there was only Shiva, or we can say Shiva and Shakti were one. Then Shakti separated from Shiva, right? She went to create the universe. But Shakti wants to go back to Shiva. Now, this cannot happen on a mass scale. In every person, Shakti is down, Shiva is up. And every person for himself, he can take Shakti back up to Shiva, right? So the soul wants to rise in consciousness. Why does it? Because when it climbs the ladder of consciousness, Shakti climbs up and Shakti is able to meet Shiva. Is this coming clear to everyone? I'm trying to explain it in different ways. So the soul is looking for consciousness, but as a soul, it cannot gather consciousness. It has to come into a physical form. It has to come into a physical body. The soul, it is like this, that it wants to say gather, or we can say we go to a place to gather gold, right? So we want to gather gold. So gold for the soul is consciousness. Now, as a soul, it cannot gather consciousness, right? It has to come into a physical form. So it is always seeking a mother and father who will allow it to give birth, and it will always try to seek a mother and father according to its own desires of what it wants in life. Now, where does it gather consciousness from? Supposing you go on a gold hunt, you will say, okay, there's gold in this river, let me take out gold from this river. Or there's gold in this mine, let me take out gold from the sand or whatever, right? Similarly, where does the soul gather consciousness from? Anyone can say? Anyone? Which is the source of consciousness? Consciousness and function is what you call mixed together, and we'll just look at it. Consciousness and function is mixed together. So we say the soul comes into a body-brain system, a physical body-brain system. Its purpose is to gather consciousness. Of course, when it is born, the birth shock and the fall in vibrations, it forgets that it has come to gather consciousness. It thinks it has come to gather money, right? So it forgets about that. That's different. Now, when the soul takes a physical form, it is gifted. It is gifted with 4 functions. The 4 functions are thinking, feeling, sensing, moving. It is gifted with these 4 functions. As a soul, it does not have this. It has a kind of basic sensitivity. It has a kind of basic sensitivity. So, if you talk to somebody who has died, then the vibrations of your thinking will touch him in a form of sensitivity where he may realize what you are trying to say, but he cannot understand your language. You understand? Because the soul cannot think, right? It cannot feel, it cannot sense. There is a sensitivity, so we'll say there is a little bit of sensitivity, and moving, it moves in a different space time, so it doesn't have the moving what we walk around and all that, muscles and all that, right? Now, what is the difference between soul and the body-brain system? The soul has a form, but that form is a subtle form. Our body-brain system has a physical form, right? Well, let's put it in another way. That supposing you want to build a house and you design a house in your mind, then the house has a form, but a subtle form. When you fill cement and concrete and everything into that form, then it has a physical form, an explicit form, right? But there is a subtle in you. When you did it in your mind, it was definitely made with some kind of subtle matter, some kind of subtle magnetism, right? So the architect did it in his mind, and then it took 2 years to build the house, became physical. Similarly, the soul has a form, but it has a subtle form. When it comes into a body-brain system, it has a physical form, and it can only gather consciousness with a physical form, right? So, now, where does it gather consciousness from? From these 4 functions. From these 4 functions. These are 4 functions given to the soul. Of course, there is a 5th function called sex. I have not taken that, right? These are 4 functions given to it by coming into a physical body, right? Now, what did we say was the characteristic of the 3rd state of consciousness? What was the characteristic of the 3rd state of consciousness? Attention that I am doing. So, I am thinking. So, where is my arrow of attention? On my thought. On my thought. Now, I want to think. I don't want to stop the function of thinking, but I want to take out consciousness from the process of thinking, from the function of thinking. Am I coming across in this? Right? How do I do that? You're sitting here. So let us say your sitting here is moving. Moving has 2 parts, the positive part of really moving and the negative part of not doing anything. Just now you're in the negative part of moving. So, how will you extract consciousness from this function of moving? How will you do it? I've already told you. What will you do? You will
directing attention.
You will divide the attention. So if you're thinking something, you will keep thinking, but you will take out a little attention from thinking and you will put it on the I inside, that I am feeling my presence, I am holding my presence, I thinking. I thinking. Can you get it? So we went to the river and we took a, what do you call, a sieve, charni, right? And we put it in the river and we did the sand like this. The sand is thinking and the eye is the gold. The eye is the gold. We separated the gold from the sand. The gold was already there in the sand. The gold was in the function of thinking. Is this now clear? Right? We take the second, now we take the second one, feeling. So I say my son or my daughter comes in front of me, so there's a feeling, what they call affection for the daughter. Right? So I have affection over here. Right? And I look at the son, I look at the daughter, but I divide a little attention, not total attention on them, little attention on I, father, feeling this. So I'm separating the, what do you call, gold from the feeling. Similarly in sensing, you sense the chair is not comfortable, but you separate I, sensing, right? So this process, slowly this feeling of I becomes stronger and stronger. And that I, the more the feeling of I becomes stronger, we start rising in consciousness. One day the real I is the soul, the spirit, beyond that. Okay? Now, there are many things in this. What do we mean by feeling of I? Is this clear to everyone? Can I rub this out? Yeah, clear? What do we mean by feeling of I? Where do we get our feeling of I from? Where do I get? Supposing you go in a room and you're talking with your friends, and it's a big room, and there are many people in the room, and here you're talking with some friends. Some people are talking there, some people are talking there, right? And they're just talking in the background. You don't know what they are saying. You don't know what they are saying. It's just kind of like the cars are going, the humming noise of the cars, people are talking, and you're talking to your friends or whatever. But suddenly in that group which is talking far away, somebody takes your name. What happens? What happens? Right? Now your attention has gone automatically. Automatically. So where do we get our feeling of I from? Where do we get our feeling of I from? Huh? Pratibha? Huh? Where do we get our feeling of I from? Through, but where is our feeling of I? What is it today connected to? Our name. Our name. Do we have any feeling of I which is not connected with name? Can you get? Now, did we come with the name or was the name given to us? Given to us. Right? So, we don't know what I is today. What we call as I is just our name. So, we'll just talk a little bit of I and then go forward. Then come back to this again. This is clear, I suppose. Now we'll divide our feeling of I into three parts, right? The real part, the, what do you call, acquired part, and the imaginary part. Feeling of I, right? So when I say name, which part does it come in? Acquired part. Acquired part, right? Now, name gets degree. Which part does it come in? See, in the acquired part, all the roles. So, to get a degree, I have to be a student. So, student is a role, right? I was born to a mother and father. So, what do you call son or daughter is a role. Can you get it? So what is the degree? Degree is the beginning of the imaginary part. It's on the borderline. It's not yet imaginary part, right? Now, supposing tomorrow I win a lottery, a lot of money comes in, right? Will my feeling of I change? It has to change. Will my feeling of I change? Which part has changed? I've added from which part? The imaginary part, because having so much money in my hand, and money has a hidden power in it. Why do we run after money? Because we are not running after money. We are running after the power which is hidden in money, right? So, will my feeling of I change? It will change, right? Now I'm a powerful person. I have money, right? So that is what have I created? What have I created? Imaginary picture. An imaginary picture. And of course, if somebody says that there is this Mr. Ambani who has more money than you, right, then I feel bad, right? How can somebody else have more money than me, right? So, I have an imaginary picture. Now, what happens with all the roles in life? What happens with all the roles in life? Change. No, between the imaginary and the role is acquired. Supposing you become a father, then it is an acquired role. Yeah, it is not the real I. Father is not the real I. One day you are going to leave your son anyway or daughter anyway, right? So it has nothing to do with the real, but it is still relatively real in the sense that you are playing a role, right? So I hope I'm coming across what is my feeling of I. Now, supposing I criticize you and I say you're not a good father, you don't look after your son, will you feel hurt? You'll feel hurt. Why do you feel hurt? Why do you feel hurt?
Because I have a specific image of me.
You have made a picture of what a good father you are. You have made a picture of what a good father you are, right? And I have thrown a stone at that picture. I have thrown a stone at that picture. Now the picture is imaginary. The role is acquired. There is at least some relative truth in the role, but the picture is imaginary. What you think of yourself. That is what we call as ego, right? How many pictures do we have? Right. And are we identified with all those pictures? You're Gujarati?
Yeah.
So I say that you're a useless father, what happens? I've not said it, huh? What happens? Hurts. What do you call hurt in Gujarati? Jeev bade. Em ke ne? What do they call it in Gujarati? Jeev bade. Jeev is soul. Jeev is soul, right? In English we can't say my soul is burning. It's not possible. Right? But in Gujarati you can say it. It's a more what you call technically perfect language, right? So what does it mean? What does it mean? Why does Jeev bade? Why does the soul feel? See, the ego is hurt, but the ego never suffers. It refuses to suffer. The soul suffers. The soul suffers, right? You know, when you take a loan from the bank, there is a guarantor, right? The person who taken the loan has not to bother about anything. Who suffers? The guarantor suffers, right? Similarly, what do you call, you got hurt because of your picture, and picture is the ego, right? But who is suffering? The ego won't suffer. The soul suffers. Why does the soul suffer? Why does the soul suffer?
It's affecting the purpose of rising in consciousness.
He's telling you, if you rise in consciousness and if you can have even one glimpse of the real I, you will never get hurt again, because then the ego is broken down. Can you understand? It is trying to give you a message over here, right? And to get a feeling of the real I, what do we have to do? We have to gather gold, gather consciousness, right? And to gather consciousness, you have to divide attention in the normal functions. You don't have to sit in meditation. Huh? You just have to do the normal functions of life with divided attention, but very difficult. Now just imagine, whenever we have a feeling of I, do we ever have a feeling of the real I? Never. Not even once in our life, right? Before we had a name, we had a feeling of the real I, but we were not conscious of it. We were not conscious of it, right? So we pass our whole life in the false, right? And the imaginary keeps on increasing. You will get a degree as an engineer, and then you will say, what a good engineer am I? And you will say, in my office nobody else works, I have to do all the work, right? And see, so you'll keep on adding pictures. You'll keep on adding pictures, and the imaginary becomes more and more powerful, and so far away from truth we come, so far away from truth. So we have to go make a journey towards the real I, right? Now, does this feeling of I, when consciousness comes in, does it expand or does it contract? He got hurt. I called him something. He got hurt. In relation to feeling of I, why did he get hurt? See, there's so many things in the feeling of I. There's in your feeling of I that you as a married person, you as a father, you have this car, you have this house, you have this money, you have everything is in that feeling of I. So when you use the word I, it is not just your name. Can you see? You have included all this. Why did you get hurt? Why did you get hurt? Because being a bad father you have not included in your feeling of I. Can you see? Supposing I say in small things you keep on getting irritated. You're full of irritation. Feel hurt. And why do you feel hurt? Because you feel you never get irritated. Can you understand? Right? So, as consciousness expands, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, as consciousness expands, suddenly I see that apparently I don't get irritated, but there is somebody lying in my unconscious mind which gets irritated all the time. Till now I was not aware of it, but now it has come in my field of consciousness. I can look at it. Can you understand what I'm trying to say? So consciousness is a field, right? So, and attention is the torch. So when you throw the attention in the field, you see, or you take a dark room and you throw a torch and you see what is in the dark room. But if the light is more, if you have two torches, you see more. And if the light expands, then you see everything that is in the room. Everything that is in the room. And this expansion of what do you call knowledge between consciousness and attention is what we call awareness. I am aware that this is lying in my house. My attention is not on it just now, but I am aware, okay, that I have a vacuum cleaner in my house, right? So we become aware of what is lying in our field of consciousness, right? So the whole idea is to expand consciousness, which we do through thinking, feeling, sensing, moving, right? Okay, now we'll go a little deeper into this. One day we want a feeling of the real I. The real I is Krishna. The real I is God sitting inside. The Vaishnavas say in the beginning you get a jhanki, just a small glimpse. But even one small glimpse is enough if we can get. But just now we spend our whole lives in the acquired I and the imaginary I. We spend our whole lives there. See, just imagine that tomorrow you get an award. What a great work you're doing for the company, right? Which I will become more powerful? Imaginary I. The imaginary I. Or maybe you're made the president of some club or something. Everybody likes to be president of the club because they can't be president of the country, right? So for 1 year they become president of the club. They're very happy people. Now let us, this is the instrument which we use, the instrument which we use. What do we use it for? Extraction of consciousness. And when we rise in consciousness, the imaginary comes into our, we are free of the imaginary, we are free of the acquired, and what remains is the real I. Right? So this is our, we are climbing this ladder of consciousness, and we are getting consciousness from these four functions, and these four functions are gifted to the body-brain system when the soul takes birth in a physical form. Now, what is the structure of the body-brain system? What is the structure of the body-brain system? So our body-brain system is like a three-storied factory. Three-storied factory. In the top story is the thinking center. Right? So top story is the thinking center. In the middle story is the emotional or feeling center. And in the lower story are sensing, moving, sex. This is the lower story. So what we have is a three-storied building, right? And these three stories are this way. So we have how many centers? We won't take sex just now. When we go a little deeper, we will take sex, right? So how many centers do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we have 2 centers which are working all the time, but we cannot hear what they are saying. That is, we have no communication with them. The first is the higher emotional, and the higher thinking. Now, when we took that, thinking, feeling, sensing, moving, right? So, if a person is extracting consciousness from thinking, in the old Indian terminology, what will you call it? What will you call it? In the old terminology of the Shastras, what will you call it? Jnana Yoga. But if a person is extracting consciousness from feeling, what will you call it? Bhakti Yoga. If a person is, extracting from sensing, what will you call it? Hatha Yoga. And from moving, karma is moving. From moving, karma yoga, right? But today times have changed. You can't do one yoga. You have to do a balance of all 4. So we are going to talk about a balance of all 4, from thinking, feeling, sensing and moving, right? Okay. Now, what does the higher emotion do? Yeah?
Is that a hierarchy or is it just 4 different?
Pardon?
Are the 4, is it a hierarchy? One is above the other or is it all?
There's no hierarchy.
Oh, because you said story, that was a hierarchy.
No. It's just the 3 stories. But there is something over here that, these are all brothers, right? And one brother may feel that I'm a little better than the others, right? The thing is that they all have to, okay, I'll take it in another way. Then we come back to this. I won't rub this out. What do we mean by the word mind? Please tell me when the time is over. I wouldn't know. I haven't kept a watch. Huh? Yeah. What do we mean by the word mind? Thinking mind, a feeling mind, a sensing mind, a moving mind. Now, these are 4 brothers, the 4 centers, and all together they form the mind. Now, we'll just take a simple example. All of you are married people, so you are very intelligent, right? So, now, when our personality forms, say around 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, our personality forms. Even though all this is mind, thinking is also mind, feeling is also mind, sensing is also mind, moving is also mind, right? But uh, our center of gravity comes in one of these, right? So you'll go to somebody's house, there'll be books everywhere. You know his center of gravity is in the thinking center. One person, I'm only interested in meeting friends and meeting my relatives. His center of gravity is in the feeling center, right? But somebody is only interested in going to good restaurants and having good food and good drink and all that. Then his center of gravity is in the sensing center. But somebody wants to go tracking and somebody wants to, and you will see people have a center of, even though this whole thing is mind, right? Now the whole thing is mind, but what happens is that at a certain age, because of our personality, our center of gravity gets stuck in one, right? So if you tell me something, I'm stuck in the I'll think too much about it, right? And everything is a mess inside. Where I should be feeling, I'll be thinking, and where I should be thinking, I'll be feeling. So if I'm in the feeling center, and you tell me you buy this share today, it will double tomorrow, right? I'll immediately buy it, right? Now there I should take that with the thinking center, but I'm taking it with the feeling center, right? So now you get married and say husband is the center of gravity in one center and wife is center of gravity in another center. And all this is a collage. You know what a collage is? Truth is a collage. Thinking, feeling, sensing, moving. So you're all living in one flat. The four brothers are living in one flat. And there are four windows in the flat. Each one has one window in his room. Right? So one person looks out of his window and he sees there are clouds today, it's going to rain. Husband looks out of his window, the clouds today is going to rain because husband is in one center. Wife looks out of the other window, he says, no, there's sunshine, it's not going to rain today. And this happens every time in life, right? All the time it happens. Can you understand? So we are stuck to one window and we don't realize that the other person is looking out of another window. And the beauty is that all four have to stay together and all four can't speak each other's language. Right? Feeling is 30,000 times more faster than thinking, right? And thinking works at a certain speed. Moving is more like thinking, but sometimes if you become an expert on karate or something, then your moving is working faster than normal thinking. It may go up to feeling, etc., etc. Right? So all of them are working at different speeds, right? And they all have to live together. So to walk on the, even to spiritual path, that is to gather consciousness, first we have to bring the four centers into balance. And that is why we do the rhythmic breathing. The more we practice the rhythmic breathing, the more the four centers will come into rhythm and balance. And this is very, very important, very important. Otherwise, our whole life, the wrong, person is doing the wrong work. Where you should be thinking, we are feeling, and then life gets muddled up. We make a mess of our lives, right? So, this, bringing the four centers, bringing the mind into balance is very important. Mind and prana are connected, and prana and breathing are connected. And when breathing comes into rhythm, prana comes into rhythm. And when prana comes into rhythm, the mind comes into rhythm. And the four centers are working in a state of rhythm and balance, right? Then we can process on dividing our attention. Just now if I divide my attention, I'll try, but I'll remember he owes me 10 rupees. So attention gone, right? I'm stuck over there. Can you see what is happening? And this is happening all the time, right? So now we'll go a little deeper into each center. Now, each center, that is thinking, try to write in a hurry, so the moving center is a little out of balance. Can you see? I missed the I, right? So, thinking. So, thinking center is divided in vertically into two parts. Two parts. The positive part, the negative part. The positive part, the negative part. Similarly, the emotional center is divided into two parts, the positive part and the negative part. Now, we saw that there were two higher centers, the higher thinking and higher emotion or higher feeling. What is the function of feeling? What is the, see, the feeling center has something called affection. Right? It has something called affection. Affection in Gujarati we will call as lagni. Lagni. Right? What happens when you have affection for something? Not love. Love is different. What happens when you have affection for something? Supposing a mother has affection for child, right? Mother has affection for child. Then, supposing I go and complain to that mother, right, that your child has pulled up all my plants in my garden, right? What happens in the mother? Is she going to scold her child, or is she going to tell me you better put a better fence around your garden? What is going to happen? She's going to tell me, huh? Right? You better put a better fence around your garden. So what does affection do? Huh? Yeah, but what? It distorts our reality. It distorts our perception. Distorts our perception. See, the Indian Shastra is called as six. What are they called? Six? Darshan. It is all about seeing clearly. Seeing clearly. Right? Everything. Atha yoga darshanam. To see clearly. Through the process of yoga, you come to a state of. But if I have affection, can I see clearly? No. Can I see clearly? Only when I transform this raw material called affection. This is the raw material. This is the body-brain system is a factory. Right? I have to transform that. Right? And we transform it into something called love. But prem chai lagni nathi. Right? What is the difference? What is the difference? What is the difference?
One is positive, one is negative.
No. Huh? One is lower, one is higher. Yeah.
Is it non-attachment to the image and actually being able to appreciate and love everything that is?
In a way, yes. But how will you understand it? How will you see it? See, the word in Gujarati is very beautiful, they say lagni એટલે જે લાગી જાય. What word did you use just now? Attachment. Right? The mother is attached to the child. She does not love the child. There is love, but it is through attachment. Can you see? Attached to the child. Right? And as long as attachment is there, we cannot see clearly. Right? Now, if the child passes in the exam, does the lagni increase or decrease? Just as the feeling of I increases or decreases. I am not using the English word affection. It increases. Right? And if he fails in this, the mother is irritated. Right? Lagni decreases. So, one of the things about affection, it can increase and it can decrease. Supposing you criticize me, will my affection for you grow or grow less? It will go less. But if you praise me, right, it will grow more. So, affection is something which depends upon the outer. Now, as we transform that, how do we transform? By extracting consciousness, and the light of consciousness falls on affection, it transforms into something higher called love. Or wherever you rise in consciousness, the byproduct is love. Can you understand what I'm trying to say? Love is the byproduct of consciousness. So, what happens then? What happens then? Then whether he passes the exam or whether he fails, there is no change, there is stability. Love is stable. Love can see, the darshan, the perception becomes clear. So, the emotional center has been given to man for a higher purpose, and that higher purpose is the perception of truth. The perception of truth, right? But for that he has to purify the emotional center. As long as the emotional center is in negative emotions, which is our topic for today, which we'll have to continue tomorrow, is in negative emotions, it cannot see. It cannot see. Supposing I go and complain to the mother, your child has uprooted all my plants. The mother is not going to see the child is at fault. She'll say, okay, why, you're a stupid person, why aren't you putting, right? And so when she's blaming me, which part of the emotional center is active? Is it the positive part or the negative part? The negative part. When I find fault with him, it is the negative part. When I'm complaining about anything, it is the negative part of the emotional center. Now, out of the whole day, how much time do we spend in the negative part of the emotional center?
90%.
And unless that is cleared, unless that is purified, can you see? We cannot perceive truth, because for truth you need a higher emotion to perceive truth. Now, what tells us that hidden in emotion is perception? Darshan. What tells us that hidden in emotion is perception, darshan? Again we go to mother and child. Supposing the child has grown up, the son has grown up and he is living, say, 500 miles away, right? And what do you call, the child falls ill, he gets a fever or something. If the mother is 500 miles away, will there be some change in her, what do you call, inner perception? There has to be. Whether the child phones her or not, she knows. You understand? So, love can see. Can you see? Love can see. But that is a small part which is hidden in the emotional center. For awakening that part, you have to, what do you call? Purify the emotional center. Mr. Tavaria used to say that in my past life, I swallowed a colored TV, right? So I can see, And when I look at a person, I see 200 lifetimes in the future and 200 lifetimes previous. Right? I'll give you a small example. One day we were going in a train from Mysore to Bangalore. And we were in the chair car. And he had this habit of laughing all the time, creating humor all the time, So he was sitting in the middle. There were 3 seats on this side, and one Mr. Atre was sitting on the window seat, and I was sitting on the aisle seat. And just not exactly here, but one seat forward, that is diagonally, one more person who had come with us, he was sitting. His name was Mr. Angrish, and that was 2 seats on that side, and this side there were 3 seats. So next to him the seat was empty. So he hit me like this. He's telling me in my ear, just see, in 5 minutes one beautiful girl is going to come and sit next to Angrish. Right? And then you see what happens to him. So after 5 minutes, really she came with bangles from here to here and hair and goggles, and there was the bag hanging, and all right, and she sat next to him, and she put her hand on the armrest, right, and the armrest was a thin armrest like that, So the minute she put her hand like this on the armrest, Angrish took away his hand like this, and then he tried to put his a little like this. Then again he would shift like this, and both of us were laughing away, Right now he could see this. This is perception, right? He says, when I was 7 years old, I saw that my elder sister was changing her clothes in front of me. So I said, why is my elder sister changing her clothes in front of me? And then he saw that he was looking through the wall. Right? So she was in a different room. Right? And so what I'm trying to, we don't want to awaken that kind of perception. But there will be a different perception which will increase. What kind of perception when we rise in consciousness, and what kind of perception will be? Just a small example, what kind of perception will come? Even if we rise a little, that 4th state of Turiya, it does not come at one time. As we rise in Jagruti a little, that much amount comes to meet us, what we deserve, or for what we have worked, So if we rise a little, how do we see normal life? What will happen in normal life? If we rise a little, come on, let's see. We don't want to see through the wall. What will happen?
We can see events of life without being one of the actors.
What will be the first thing that will drop from our life? It is never anyone else's fault. Right? I'll say you're late and that's why this meeting got, were cancelled or something of that sort. I lost this meeting or something. Right? But in that state, I realized that behind your coming late and my losing this meeting, there are so multiple causes. Being late is just a small part of those multiple causes. Can you understand? And causes lie on a higher dimension than effects. Can you see? What we see with the 5 senses are effects. You see the cause, right? The detective sees the effect, the dead body, right? Who has murdered him is the cause. He has to go into it from some higher plane. He has to use his mind. He can't see that. He has to deduct from there. What else will go from our life? What else will go? Simple thing. Negativity is a big thing. Out of that negativity, one we said, I will never find fault with Others? And what is the other thing?
Anger.
Anger is difficult, takes some time, very high energy, very high frequency. But we'll start working with anger.
Complaint.
Complaining. We will never complain again. Right? So, suddenly life will take a 180-degree turn and we'll suddenly feel a responsibility that what is happening in my life has been invited by me. Right? Of course, in the old days, the Indian wife always found fault with the mother-in-law. Right? So, this mother-in-law has been invited by me. By me, can you see? So what is my situation in life? It is because of my own and this develops responsibility. That what is lying in my subconscious mind, unconscious mind that has attracted this situation in life, and is there a way to change it? Is there a way to transform it that I attract something totally different? So I'll certainly see. Now, we have 10 minutes more. We won't talk about this, we'll just talk about our present situation. How we see life. What I'm trying to say is the perception of life changes. The perception of life changes. Now, everything in life is born of three causes. Three causes, right? The real cause. This is on a very high plane. We don't know the real cause behind anything in life. So we'll forget this. It's on a very high plane, right? Then the material cause and the instrumental cause. Instrumental cause, right? Now I find fault with somebody, what am I finding? What am I looking at? Instrumental cause, the instrumental cause. Now he talked about anger, right? And I make him angry. What is the instrumental cause and what is the material cause? What is the instrumental cause and what is I make him angry. I call him all kinds of names and all that and I make him angry. So which is the instrumental cause and what is the material cause?
Anger is material.
Anger is the material cause and my making him angry is the instrumental cause. Can you get what I'm saying? See, supposing there is a potter, kumbhar. So he's making pots. What is the material cause and what is the instrumental cause? The clay from which he makes the pot is the material cause. The kumbhar is the potter is the instrumental cause. If there is no clay but you have 100 potters, you can't make a pot. Can you see? Now here comes responsibility. The perception of life changes. He did not make me angry. The material called anger was already lying within me. You see, he is just a nimit. Instrumental cause we call as nimit. Can you see I've risen a little in consciousness, my perception of life changes. Now I'm not blaming him. How can I blame him if he has made me angry? He is just the instrumental cause. The material called anger is already lying in my unconscious mind. He just allowed it to come out from the unconscious mind into the conscious mind. I got angry. Now if there is no material, no clay lying in the unconscious mind, right? If 100 people try to make me angry, can I get angry? It's not possible. Because however much the instrumental cause is there, there is no material cause. There is no material cause. And it is very important that as we rise in consciousness, we see life, we divide life into what is the instrumental cause and what is the material cause. And suddenly life takes a total turn. Total turn. I'm going to end now, but which Shastra is this explained most beautifully? Which Shastra is this explained most beautifully? In the Gita. In the Gita. Krishna is saying the material called death. See, Arjuna is very egoistic. Right? He feels, I'm going to send this arrow and kill this person. And Krishna says, don't think it is your arrows which are killing that person. Right? Now this is very difficult to understand because our minds only work in chronological order. Right? Past is past, present is present, and future is future. Right? So Krishna is saying the material called death I have already sent to their home. Don't think you are killing them. You are only sending the postcard that you have died. You know, you see in the movies when somebody's son or somebody dies in the war, that person comes, the postman comes with a postcard. We are very sorry to say this thing has died a hero's death for his country or whatever. Similarly, Krishna is saying that you are only the nimit, the instrumental cause. Don't think you are killing those people. Don't think you are killing those people. Death I have already sent to their homes. You are just the final arrow. Your arrow goes in them, and that is the final postcard. Now, such a Shastra is very difficult to understand. For anybody, it's very difficult to understand. Right? But when we realize this, that there is an instrumental cause and there is a material cause. Right? And death had already come above their homes, was just waiting for that final arrow, and that arrow goes, and they die. So he says, you are the nimit. Of course, it is much more deeper than that. And the beauty of that, because many people criticize, how can there be a, what do you call, Shastra, where you're allowing somebody to kill people? Right? And so he says, when you're detached, when there is no karta bhav, and this comes as you rise in a higher level of consciousness, you suddenly realize life is a play, and you are playing a role, and suddenly that identification with the role breaks, right? That there is detachment, but you're still a very good player. You become a better player, right? So when there's detachment, then there is no karma, and there is no doer inside. There's just the player inside. There's just the player inside. And when there is no doer inside, just the player inside, there is no karma. And Krishna is telling him, as a player in the drama of life, by killing them, you are not gathering karma. But as a player in the drama of life, if you, what do you call, without attachment, even love a person, you are still creating karma. And this is the very high beauty of the Gita, right? So we realize that he's saying that death, they have already died. Don't think them as alive. You just send the postcard that they have died. That is the instrumental cause. And this will develop a new intelligence within us, right? That if we can divide everything in life, what is the instrumental cause and what is the material cause? And much higher, of course, is the real cause. We'll go into that tomorrow, right? Okay, tomorrow we'll go deeper into negative emotions and we'll talk about this also. Any questions, anyone else? Any questions? No questions, good. Either everybody is enlightened or I'm enlightened. Yeah.
So earlier you spoke about the three different eyes that we have.
What goes to making the I?
What goes into
Making the I, the feeling of I. The feeling of I.
I was wondering, when we are aware, that is, I am thinking or I am moving, what feeling of I is that connected?
That is, initially it's a very weak feeling of presence, and slowly that increases in magnitude, right? And it comes with its own emotion, because it's a very high feeling of I. I'll give you an example. That supposing you're in debt, you know, debt, you have to pay off your creditors, right? And massive debt. And say tomorrow morning the creditors are going to come, a whole line of them. How will you feel the night before? I've seen this in people, that is why I'm just asking you. You'll be in total turmoil, no? Total turmoil, what to do, and what kind of language they'll use, all that, no? Now supposing at that time somebody comes, I'm your elder brother, I'll give you this loan, you take it and pay off your creditors. What will you feel? What kind of relief? As if you've been relaxed in 1,000 years or something, no? Right? So when that inner presence, as you start feeling that inner presence, it brings about a deep relaxation in the body-brain system. There is responsibility of life, but you don't have to detach from life. The detachment happens automatically. You know that nothing in life can now ever disturb you again. Can you get it? So that is one quality of the presence. Supposing we take another quality of the presence, that many people, they have a very difficult life. Everybody does not have a what you call easy life. And say a person has gone through so much of pain and suffering in his life or her life or whatever, and all those scars are there on the inner emotional structure, on the psyche inside. And this feeling of presence as it increases, the feeling of I am as it increases, at one point would it be so powerful that all that would heal overnight? Not overnight, in 1 second. You understand what I'm trying to say? So it is that, and it is, and when you go through bhakti, of course, they say my lover has come, but when you go through a balance, this thing, you'll say like something like my elder brother has come, or there is someone there all the time looking after me, you know, what do you call, sensing me, helping me, you know, changing the events of life in such a way that, you know, everything moves on a kind of greased wheels. That does not mean suffering does not come in life, but then in the drama of life, sometimes the role of suffering comes, and sometimes the role of this thing, right? So a certain detachment from life comes, a certain perception opens up, right? And a deeper understanding of life comes with that.
જીવ કેમ બળે છે?
Hmm?
ઈગો થાય છે,
હા,
પણ જીવ બળે છે. શું કામ બળે છે? એ મને સમજાવું.
કારણ કે જીવ ત્યાં ચોટેલું છે
ઈગો સાથે.
જે વસ્તુ સાથે. સપોઝિંગ જીવ ગાડી નવી ગાડી લીધી અને જીવ ગાડી સાથે ચોટેલું છે, રાઈટ? તો ગાડી ઉપર કોઈ છોકરાઓ સ્કૂલમાં નીકળે અને પથ્થરથી આમ સ્ક્રેચ કરે, રાઈટ? તો ઈગો એકદમ અપસેટ થઈ જાય, પણ ઈગો બળતો નથી, જે બળે છે એ આપણો જીવ બળે છે, કારણ કે જીવ એટલે અટેન્શન. જીવ એટલે અટેન્શન ગાડીમાં ગઈ પણ પાછું નથી આવ્યું, ત્યાં ચોટી ગયું છે. એટલે જ્યાં જ્યાં અટેચમેન્ટ હોય, જ્યાં અટેન્શન ચોટેલું હોય, ત્યાં આપણો જીવ બળે. એ એનું લક્ષણ છે. અને ત્યાંથી એ ત્યાં જોવું જોઈએ. એ ત્યારે તો છે, એનું સ્વીકૃતિ હોવી જોઈએ. પછી એવી સ્થિતિ આવે જ્યાં ન બળે. હા હા, બળે નહીં. આપણે એની ઉપર ખાલી જાણવું, જાણતા જાણતા એની મેળે જ બળવાનું બંધ. બીજું કંઈ પણ કરવા જશું તો ગોટાળામાં પડશું. હા, જસ્ટ બાય વોચિંગ ઇટ, લુકિંગ એટ ઇટ.
સાયકોલોજીકલ સ્લીપની વાત કરી,
હા,
તો એમાંથી જાગવા માટે જે હાઈપર ઇન્ટેન્સિટી લઈ આવવી પડે, લઈ આવવી જોઈએ, એ કેમ નથી આવતી?
એટલે ઘણીવાર શું છે કે તાવડિયા સાહેબ કહેતા કે યોર પોઈન્ટ ઇન ટાઈમ ઇઝ નોટ યેટ કમ. I would say that Ram Dulare Bapu was my guru. અને 7 years I spent with him. અને everything in my life was Ram Dulare Bapu, everything. Even if I want to on my table change this from here to here, I'll ask him, is it okay to put it over here? Can you see the dependency? It's very difficult to understand when you're totally dependent on one person, right? And then suddenly one day he was not there. And he was not there, and there was a big vacuum in my life, a big depression in my life. What to do? You don't know what to do. So in the morning, if you're going to go to the market, you'll say, Bapu, market e jaun chu. You know? And suddenly there's a big vacuum, right? Whom to talk to? You get it? And this happened in 1982. And then 1988, I met Mr. Tavaria. And immediately I realized that what I wanted, he had. Can you understand? And time with him is going to be limited. The body is its own time, you know, it's going to be limited. We meet for so much time, and that's the end of the matter, right? And I realized that time between him and me it's already limited, it's already ticking away. And that created that intensity. And when I was with him, I would not just look at him or listen to him, I would drink him with all the 5 senses. Can you understand? That intensity, what do you call? I'm not praising myself. I'm just trying to, why that intensity came in my life. Because there was that big shock. Shock of Ram Dulare Bapu going. Right? And that was there, it was in me. And I said, this time, before he goes, I must be walking on my own feet. હવે થાંભલો નથી પકડવો. સમજાય છે what I'm trying to say? ભલે સત્ય દૂર હોય, it doesn't matter. But I know the way, I know the map I'm going through and where to go. Can you understand? That deep relaxation then comes in life, that now you know it. Deep, right? So that intensity usually comes from a shock. It usually comes from. And the best example we have of a shock is that of what you call Tulsidas. Right? Tulsidas, he was out somewhere, and his wife's brother came and took his wife to her father's place. And when he came home, he found his wife was not there. And there was so much of wanting to be with his wife. And this was longing, sexual longing, to be with his wife. So he goes in the night, and she's living far away, and he goes through a storm. It is already thunder, lightning, rain. He does not bother. He goes in that storm, and then the river is in flood, and he doesn't know what to do. He stands on a dead body and reaches the other shore. And then his wife's room is on the first floor. And there's how to go. There's a snake hanging there, big snake. He catches the snake and he goes onto the first. You can take all this as symbolic, right? And his wife opens the door and she shouts at him, so much attachment you have for me, so much moha you have for me, why don't you have the same for Ram? And that went in as a shock, right? Went in that moment he woke up, his life transformed, and now everything became Ram. Can you understand? And there was no complaining. He didn't tell his wife, is this the way you treat me? I walked so many miles in the storm, I went through or stood on a dead body and I crossed there. This is what we would do, right? We would justify, okay, this is the way to treat me, at least call me inside, right? But the shock went in, and the shock went in and his company. So how do we use shocks in life? How do we use shocks in life? And there are many times between husband and wife when the wife says something of the husband and the wife or husband feels it as a shock, but immediately they buffer the shock. Greasing karna hai, buffer karna hai. And then the shock does not. Shock આવે તો અંદરનો જીવ જાગે, એના વગર નથી જાગતો. અને એટલે એને આપણે શું કહેવાય, મેરેજ આશ્રમ કહે છે, ગૃહસ્થ આશ્રમ, કે શોખ એકબીજાને માર્યા કરો. જીવ જગાડવા માટે છે. Can you get it? એટલે sometimes that point in time is there, but we need a shock to come. પછી એ ઇન્ટેન્સિટી આવી જાય અને એ ઇન્ટેન્સિટી આવી જાય તો દૂર નથી, બાજુમાં જ છે. ઇન્ટેન્સિટી જોઈએ. Right, we'll stop over here. Thank you. Tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock, we are meeting. 11 o'clock. Thank you.